The stars had never looked so cold. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge of the orbital defense station Terra Prime, watching through the reinforced viewport as alien ships materialized from the void. They came in waves, each vessel larger than Earth's. Greatest dreadnoughts, their hulls gleaming with an oily black sheen that seemed to devour light itself. The Keth Collective had arrived in force. "Sir, final count is coming in," reported Lieutenant Beck, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. 3,700 vessels. They formed a complete sphere around our system. Kane nodded grimly. 3 months ago, humanity had intercepted the first Keth transmission, a cold, mechanical announcement that Earth had been marked for integration into their collective. The alien empire had consumed 47 star systems in the past century, absorbing entire civilizations into their hive-like structure. Now it was humanity's turn. "Incoming transmission on all frequencies," Beck announced. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that defied easy description. The Keth representative stood nearly 3 meters tall, its elongated limbs ending in multifaceted appendages that clicked and whirred with mechanical precision. What might have once been organic tissue had been replaced with biomechanical components, cables threading through translucent skin like veins of chrome. "Humans of the third planet," the entity spoke, its voice a harmony of overlapping tones. "I am Designate Prime of the Keth Collective. Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for integration. You have 72 hours to cease all resistance and prepare for absorption. Compliance will ensure minimal casualties. Defiance will result in total planetary sterilization." Kane stepped forward, his weathered face set in stone. "This is Admiral Kane of the Terran Defense Force. Earth rejects your ultimatum. We will never surrender our freedom." The alien's head tilted with an almost curious expression. "Your bravery is noted, but irrelevant. We have consumed species far more advanced than yours. Your primitive weapons cannot breach our shields. Your fragmented governments cannot coordinate effective resistance. Integration is inevitable." "Maybe," Kane replied. "But humans have a saying, it's not about the size of the dog in the fight. It's about the size of the fight in the dog." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Around Earth, the Keth fleet began to move into attack formations, their vessels pulsing with an ominous energy that painted the void in shades of amber and crimson. Deep beneath the Sahara Desert, another conversation was taking place. Dr. Reed wiped sweat from her brow as she reviewed the final calculations for Project Longshot. The underground facility hummed with barely contained energy, its fusion reactors pushed to their absolute limits. "Status report," she called to her team of engineers and physicists. 96% operational, replied Tom, the lead technician. "We need another 18 hours for full charge." Dr. Reed glanced at the countdown timer on her display. 69 hours until the Keth deadline. It would be close, terrifyingly close, but it might just be enough. Every great journey starts with a few brave explorers. Sci-fi stellar conflict is just beginning, and your support means everything. If you're hungry for HFY battles and tales of human valor against alien might, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring these front lines to you. Above ground, panic gripped the major cities as the alien blockade became visible to the naked eye. The Keth ships hung in the sky like dark omens, their presence casting psychological shadows across continents. Emergency broadcast urged calm, but Kane knew that humanity's time was running out. In the depths of space, the first Keth probe ships began their descent toward Earth's atmosphere, testing the planet's defenses with surgical precision. They encountered the orbital defense platforms and shattered them like toys, their energy weapons slicing through titanium armor as if it were paper. Kane watched the destruction with grim determination. Let the aliens think they were winning. Let them believe that humanity was just another primitive species awaiting absorption. Soon, very soon, they would learn that humans didn't fight like any other race in the galaxy. The countdown continued, its relentless march toward zero, and with each passing moment, the secret buried beneath the desert sands grew closer to unleashing humanity's answer to the Keth Collective's ultimatum. 6 months earlier, everything had changed with a single discovery. Captain Miller's scout ship had been investigating the debris field around Kepler station when her sensors detected something impossible. A Keth vessel, badly damaged and apparently abandoned. The alien craft had been drifting through the outer rim for weeks, its biomechanical hull scarred by some unknown battle. "I'm reading minimal power signatures," reported her co-pilot, Jensen. "Whatever hit this thing, it hit hard." Miller had made the decision to board the derelict, a choice that would ultimately save humanity. Inside the alien vessel, they found something extraordinary, a Keth that was still partially alive, its organic components failing while its mechanical systems continued to function. The creature's name was Vex, and unlike the others of its species, it retained fragments of its original personality from before integration. As it lay dying in that sterile alien corridor, it made a choice that would doom its own kind. It chose to help humanity. "Your species," Vex had whispered through failing vocal synthesizers, "you are different. You do not seek to conquer or absorb. You protect what you love." The alien's multifaceted eyes had focused on Miller with effort. "The collective believes you are weak because you are individuals. They are wrong. This makes you dangerous." Before its systems finally failed, Vex transmitted crucial intelligence about the Keth weakness, something no absorbed species had ever discovered, because they had all fought conventionally, trying to match the collective's superior technology. With brute force, Dr. Reed had been among the first scientists to analyze Vex's data. What she found revolutionized humanity's understanding of their enemy. The Keth collective operated as a true hive mind, their ships networked together through quantum entanglement communication systems. This connectivity was their greatest strength, allowing perfect coordination across vast fleets, but it was also their fatal weakness. "Every ship in their fleet is connected," Reed had explained to the Emergency Council of World Leaders. "They share processing power, tactical data, even consciousness itself across the network. But that means if we can introduce the right kind of interference." The breakthrough had come when Reed realized that humans possess something unique: true individual creativity. While other species had logical, predictable thought patterns that the Keth could easily adapt to, and counter human minds were chaotic, unpredictable, driven by emotion and intuition as much as logic. Project Longshot wasn't just a weapon, it was a virus of consciousness itself, working around the clock. Reed's team had developed a quantum transmission device capable of injecting human thought patterns directly into the Keth network. But not just any human thoughts. They needed someone whose mind worked in ways that were fundamentally incompatible with the collective's rigid structure. They found their answer in Jake, a young pilot diagnosed with a rare form of synesthesia. That caused him to perceive mathematics as colors and sounds. His brain processed information in ways that were completely alien to the Keth's binary thinking. "You want me to think at them?" Jake had asked when Reed explained his role. "More than that," Reed replied. "We need you to be yourself, chaotic, creative, beautifully human, and broadcast that directly into their network. Your thoughts will spread like a virus through their connected consciousness." The theory was elegant in its simplicity. The Keth collective had spent centuries absorbing species by forcing them to conform to their shared consciousness. But human individuality was like a computer virus to their system, impossible to integrate, impossible to delete, and utterly corrosive to their networked minds. As the months passed, Project Longshot took shape in the hidden facility beneath the Sahara. The quantum transmitter required more power than most countries generated in a year. Its components forged from materials that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. Reed knew they would only get one chance. The device was designed for a single, overwhelming transmission, a concentrated burst of pure human consciousness that would cascade through the Keth network faster than they could adapt or disconnect. Now, watching the alien fleet position itself around Earth, Reed made final adjustments to the transmission array. In 18 hours, Jake would link his mind to the device and broadcast his humanity across the stars. The Keth expected surrender or conventional resistance. They were about to discover that humans had never been conventional about anything. The countdown continued, and with each passing moment, humanity prepared to show the galaxy what made them truly unique among the stars. The Keth began their demonstration of power at precisely noon. Greenwich Mean Time. Admiral Kane watched from Terra, Prime as the alien vessels descended through Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. They moved with mechanical precision, targeting military installations with surgical strikes that left craters where entire bases had stood moments before. The message was clear: resistance was futile, but Kane smiled grimly as he observed their attack patterns. The aliens were being careful, methodical, preserving most of the planet's infrastructure. They still believed they would absorb humanity into their collective, and they wanted their prize intact. "Sir, we're receiving reports from every continental." "Command," Lieutenant Beck reported. "The Keth are systematically eliminating our orbital defenses and ground-based military assets. Estimated time until total military infrastructure collapse: 16 hours. Perfect timing," Kane thought. By the time the aliens finished their demonstration, Project Longshot would be ready. Across the globe, the careful theater of human desperation played out exactly as planned. Government leaders delivered somber addresses, speaking of the difficult decision to consider the alien ultimatum. Military commanders appeared before news cameras, their faces masks of barely controlled despair as they described humanity's hopeless situation. It was all an act. Deep beneath the Sahara, the final preparations were underway. Jake sat in the center of the transmission chamber, neural interface cables trailing from his skull to the massive quantum array that surrounded him. The young pilot's vitals were steady, but Dr. Reed could see the tension in his shoulders. "How are you feeling?" she asked through the intercom. Jake flexed his fingers, watching the colors that danced behind his eyes whenever he moved. "Like I'm about to have the worst headache in human history," he replied with a weak smile. "But also excited. This is bigger than anything anyone has ever attempted." Reed nodded. Jake's unique neurological makeup wasn't just essential to the weapon, it was the weapon. His brain processed reality in ways that would be completely alien to the Keth's collective consciousness. When his thoughts entered their network, they would spread like a contagion of individuality through their shared minds. "Transmission array is at full power," reported Tom from the control booth. "All quantum resonance chambers are synchronized. We're ready when you are, Doc." Above ground, Captain Miller's strike team made their final approach to the coordinates Dr. Reed had provided. Their mission was simple but crucial: protect the facility during the critical transmission period. Intelligence suggested the Keth might detect the quantum buildup moments before activation. Miller's ship, the Defiant, was one of humanity's newest stealth vessels, its hull coated with metamaterials that bent electromagnetic radiation around it like a mirage. As they descended through the atmosphere, Miller felt the weight of every human life pressing down on her shoulders. "Contact," reported her sensor operator. 3 Keth scout ships moving toward the facility. "They've detected something." Miller's jaw tightened. "All squadrons, engage. Keep them away from the transmission site at all costs." The dogfight that erupted over the Sahara was brief but vicious. Human fighters, outnumbered and outgunned, threw themselves against the alien scouts with desperate fury. Miller watched 2 of her pilots die in brilliant flashes of light, their ships disintegrated by Keth energy weapons, but they held the line. "Transmission commencing in 60 seconds, Dr. Reed's voice crackled through the communication system. "All units maintain defensive positions." In the depths of space, the Keth collective continued their methodical destruction of human resistance. "Designate." Prime observed the proceedings with what might have been satisfaction. These humans fought bravely, but their courage was meaningless against superior technology. The alien commander had absorbed 47 species into the collective. Each had fought in their own way, some with overwhelming technology, others with cunning strategy, a few with desperate brutality. But all had eventually succumbed to the inevitable logic of integration. Humans would be no different. "Integration preparations are 73% complete," reported a subordinate. "Planetary resistance is collapsing according to projections. We may commence absorption ahead of schedule." Designate Prime nodded. "Proceed with." The transmission hit the Keth network like a sledgehammer made of pure chaos. Jake's consciousness exploded outward through the quantum array, his synesthetic perception of reality flooding into the collective's shared minds. To the aliens, it was like experiencing madness itself: mathematics that tasted like music, colors that sang equations, emotions that rewrote logic itself. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. Across the Keth fleet, individual ships began to falter as their networked consciousness struggled to process thoughts that were fundamentally incompatible with their collective structure. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't technology or strategy. It was simply being human. The first Keth ship to fall was a destroyer on the fleet's outer perimeter. Jake's consciousness, amplified through the quantum transmission array, struck the vessel's network like lightning finding a conductor. The ship's biomechanical systems, designed to process information through the collective shared intelligence, suddenly found themselves overwhelmed by thoughts that refused to conform to their binary logic. Dr. Reed watched the readings on her display with growing amazement. "The transmission is cascading through their network faster than we projected," she announced to her team. "Jake's neural patterns are spreading ship to ship through their quantum entanglement system." On his display screens, Jake could see the chaos spreading through the Keth fleet like ripples on water. Each ship that fell transmitted his disruptive consciousness to its neighbors, and those ships infected others in an exponentially expanding wave of system failures. "I can feel them," Jake whispered, his voice distant and strange. "They're all connected, all thinking the same thoughts. But now they're thinking my thoughts too, and they can't make sense of them." Through the neural link, Jake experienced the alien collective consciousness firsthand. It was vast and cold, billions of absorbed minds thinking in perfect harmony. But harmony required conformity, and human thoughts were anything but conforming. Where the Keth saw mathematical precision, Jake perceived symphonies of color. Where they processed tactical data as binary sequences, his synesthetic brain translated the information into emotional textures that had no logical meaning. The aliens' shared consciousness, evolved over millennia to achieve perfect unity, began to fracture under the weight of human individuality. Admiral Kane watched from Terra Prime as the impossible unfolded above Earth. Keth ships that had moved with mechanical precision moments before now drifted like dying animals, their formation breaking apart as crews struggled with neural feedback they couldn't understand. "Sir, we're detecting massive system failures across the alien fleet," Lieutenant Beck reported, her voice filled with wonder. "Whatever Dr. Reed's team did, it's working beyond all projections." The cascade effect accelerated as more ships fell prey to Jake's disruptive consciousness. The Keth had built their entire civilization on the principle of shared thinking, but they had never encountered a mind that could function in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Jake's brain didn't just think, it painted thoughts in colors that didn't exist, composed music from mathematical equations, and found beauty in chaos itself. Designate Prime felt the invasion of foreign consciousness like acid in its veins. The creature that had once been an individual being, absorbed into the collective centuries ago, suddenly found itself remembering what it meant to be alone with its own thoughts. "What is happening?" it demanded of its subordinates, but they were experiencing their own neural crises. Across the command ship, Keth personnel began to malfunction as their biomechanical implants struggled to process the viral thoughts flooding their network. The beauty of humanity's weapon lay in its fundamental impossibility. The Keth Collective had spent eons perfecting their ability to absorb and integrate other species by forcing alien consciousness to conform to their shared mental structure. But human consciousness wasn't designed to conform to anything. It was chaotic, creative, and utterly unique to each individual. Jake's mind, amplified through the quantum array and broadcast across the Keth network, was like introducing a jazz improvisation into a perfectly tuned orchestra. The aliens couldn't integrate it, couldn't understand it, and couldn't delete it from their systems. "The transmission is reaching critical resonance," Dr. Reed announced. "Jake, how are you holding up?" The young pilot's body trembled in the transmission chair, sweat beading on his forehead as he maintained the neural link. "It's like trying to teach color to a computer," he gasped. "They keep trying to categorize my thoughts, but every time they do, the thoughts change into something else." Through the quantum link, Jake could feel the Keth fleet's networked consciousness beginning to collapse. Ships that had functioned as extensions of a single vast mind now found themselves isolated, their crews experiencing individual thought for the first time in centuries. The sensation was overwhelming, like suddenly being able to see color after a lifetime of blindness. Captain Miller watched from the Defiant as the largest Kef vessels began to lose power. The alien ships that had seemed invincible an hour ago now drifted helplessly, their crews too overwhelmed by their own rediscovered individuality to maintain basic systems. "This is impossible," Miller whispered. "How can thoughts be a weapon?" But Dr. Reed had understood from the beginning consciousness itself was the ultimate technology. Every other species the Keth had encountered thought in patterns they could eventually decode and integrate. Humans thought in ways that were fundamentally incompatible with collective consciousness. The cascade continued to spread through the alien fleet, each fallen ship adding its voice to the chorus of newly individual minds. What had begun as a weapon designed to disrupt the Kef network had become something far more profound, a liberation of consciousness itself. The tide of war had turned not through superior firepower or cunning strategy, but through the simple act of being irrepressibly, uniquely human. The Kef collective died at 17 minutes past 4 Eastern Standard Time. Admiral Kane stood on the observation deck of Terra Prime, watching as the last alien command ship powered down its weapon systems. Across Earth's sky, 3,700 vessels drifted in silent testament to humanity's impossible victory. Not destroyed, liberated. "Final status report, Lieutenant," Kane requested. Beck consulted her displays with barely contained amazement. "All Kef vessels have ceased offensive operations. We're detecting massive internal system failures across their entire fleet. Most ships appear to be operating on emergency power only." Through the quantum transmission array, Jake had done more than simply disrupt the alien network. He had inadvertently given billions of absorbed beings their first taste of individual consciousness in centuries. The effect rippled through every ship, every crew, every mind that had once been part of the collective's vast shared intelligence. Dr. Reed monitored Jake's condition as the transmission finally ended. The young pilot slumped in his chair, neural interface cables disconnecting automatically as the quantum array powered down. His vital signs were stable, but his eyes held a distant look that spoke of experiences no human had ever endured. "How do you feel?" Reed asked softly. Jake was quiet for a long moment, processing sensations that had no earthly comparison. "I felt them all," he whispered. "Every mind in that fleet. They've been asleep for so long, dreaming the same dream. And now they're waking up." The aftermath unfolded with a chaos that was almost beautiful. Across the Kef fleet, crews that had functioned as extensions of a single will suddenly found themselves capable of independent thought. Many ships experienced complete system shutdowns as their personnel struggled to adapt to individual consciousness. But some vessels began to establish communication with Earth. The first transmission came from a science ship on the fleet's outer edge. The voice that emerged from the speakers was halting, uncertain, but unmistakably individual. "Human vessels," the alien speaker began. I believe I am called Kane. I was once part of the collective, but now I am myself. I do not understand what has happened, but I wish to learn." Similar messages began flooding Earth's communication networks. Tens of thousands of Kef personnel, experiencing individual consciousness for the first time in their species' recorded history, reached out with questions, confusion, and a desperate hunger to understand what they had become. Admiral Kane found himself in the unprecedented position of orchestrating not the defense of Earth, but the rehabilitation of an entire alien fleet. Emergency protocols were established to provide humanitarian aid to vessels whose crews were essentially learning to think as individuals for the first time. Dr. Reed's team worked around the clock to develop translation protocols that could bridge the gap between human consciousness and newly awakened Kef minds. The process was complicated by the fact that many of the aliens had no concept of personal pronouns, individual desires, or private thoughts. Captain Miller led the first diplomatic mission to the former command ship. What she found there was simultaneously heartbreaking and inspiring. Hundreds of Kef personnel sitting in corridors, simply experiencing the sensation of having their own unique thoughts. Some wept without understanding why. Others stared at their hands as if seeing them for the first time. Designate Prime, the creature that had once spoken for the entire collective, sat alone on what had been the fleet's command bridge. When Miller approached, the alien looked up with eyes that held a depth of expression that had been absent during their first encounter. I remember, it said simply. Before the integration, I was called Thane. I had a mate, offspring. I chose to join the collective to save them from a plague that ravaged our world, but the collective absorbed them anyway. The alien's voice carried a weight of grief that transcended species barriers. I had forgotten until your gift reminded me what it meant to be myself. The transformation of the Keth fleet became humanity's greatest diplomatic challenge and most profound victory. News of Earth's impossible triumph spread through the galaxy at light speed, carried by automated beacons and deep space relays. The message was simple, but revolutionary. Humanity had not merely defeated the Keth collective, they had liberated it. Within months, the former collective ships became the foundation of a new interstellar alliance. The awakened Keth, grateful for their liberation, shared their vast technological knowledge with humanity. More importantly, they served as ambassadors to other species, spreading the message that individual consciousness was not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be celebrated. Jake recovered from his ordeal to find himself transformed into something unique in the galaxy, a human who had experienced collective consciousness and returned to tell the tale. His synesthetic abilities, once seen as a neurological quirk, were now recognized as the key that had unlocked the prison of billions of minds. Years later, as humanity took its first steps into a galaxy that now viewed them with a mixture of awe and healthy respect, Dr. Reed often reflected on the lesson of their victory. Other species had tried to defeat the Keth through superior technology, cunning strategy, or overwhelming force. Humanity had succeeded by doing something far simpler and infinitely more powerful. They had simply been themselves. The galaxy would never be the same. Across the stars, species that had cowered before the threat of absorption now looked to Earth as a beacon of hope. Humanity had proven that individual consciousness was not an evolutionary dead end, but the ultimate expression of life's creativity. And in the depths of space, where the Keth collective had once spread its mechanical unity, new voices began to sing. Billions of unique minds, discovering what it meant to be gloriously, magnificently individual. The age of forced conformity had ended. The age of celebrated diversity had begun. All because humanity had dared to be human.